Welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast, made for women who want their healthiest years to be ahead of them, not behind them. Join your host, Courtney Townley, right now as she breaks down the fairy tale health story you have been chasing all of your life into sensible action steps and lasting change. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast. As always, I'm so grateful you're here. I know there's a lot of places you could be, so I do not take it lightly that you have my podcast in your ears. And today I want to talk about the value of being a generalist when it comes to your health. Why do I want to talk about this topic? Well, for a couple of reasons. Number one, modern day culture, I feel like, consistently presents health as if it's purely a physical pursuit. And that is problematic on so many levels. Health is not just a physical pursuit. It is a multidimensional pursuit because you can have physical health without really having mental health. And can we even really call that health, right? Or you could have really great skills for managing your emotional health, but you could really be struggling in the physical health department. So all of these different dimensions need to be taken into consideration, and the multidimensionality of health needs to inform the strategies that we use to improve our health. The other reason I want to talk about this is because I can't tell you how many coaches and mentors I've had over the years, specifically with business, who have told me that I need to basically narrow down my message to be very specialized in health. And it goes against my belief about what actually promotes health. I want to address health for the whole person, not for a part of the person. Because my belief is that health is not an exercise in isolation. It's not an exercise in addressing just one component of a bigger equation. Health is really an exercise in integration. It is an exercise in considering all of the things in your life that have the potential to influence your health. And many of you longtime listeners have heard me say this before. I believe that really health is an exercise in learning how to manage all of the things in your life that act as stressors on your life. And it is not just the food that you eat and how much you move your body that influences the stress in your life. Those are two of many, many factors. So a generalist is defined by dictionary.com as a person whose knowledge, aptitudes, and skills are applied to a field as a whole. So there's kind of a broader approach and a wider understanding of different things, different components that can help a person to make better decisions when they are approaching something from the mentality of a generalist. A generalist can visualize the bigger picture more easily and really think outside of the box or outside of the narrow pathway. The definition of a specialist is a person who devotes herself to one subject or to one particular branch of a subject or pursuit. Now, I have mentioned, I don't know how many times on this podcast, but a lot, I have mentioned the name of Ido Portal. And Ido Portal has been, for me, one of the most influential teachers of my lifetime. He is incredibly gifted and incredibly skilled at helping people to become better movers. And I'm talking about him here specifically because I'm using him as an example to express this concept of approaching health from a generalist perspective as being so powerful. So Ido has a fierce enthusiasm for helping his students to become generalists when it comes to movement. And what that means is rather than encouraging his students to focus on developing one modality of movement, He brings in a ton of different modalities in order to make the student a better mover. So a really clear-cut example of this would be, rather than simply doing Olympic lifting, and I'm saying simply as if that's simple, right? Olympic lifting, please do not hear me like saying that is a simple sport. But if you are purely an Olympic lifter, and that is the movement modality that you are putting all of your time and energy into, you are specializing in that field of movement, you actually limit your capacity and skill set for movement in general. Specialties have limitations. So you may become excellent in one movement modality, like Olympic lifting, like gymnastics, like running or swimming or biking. But that excellence comes at the expense of other movement skills and capabilities. Movement is not one thing. It is not one modality. It is many things, and it incorporates many modalities. So movement includes strength and power and flexibility and agility and speed and endurance and coordination and reflexivity and fluidity, just to name a few things. And the more diverse your skill sets are, the better mover you become. And there are very few movement modalities that actually include all of the skill sets that are possible in the movement arena. In fact, I don't know that there is one. The one, of course, that always comes to the forefront of my mind as one of the more diverse modalities is dance. Dancers have to have strength and speed and fluidity and, be able to react quickly and have great coordination and all of the things. And yet, I was a dancer for many, many years, and I became a better mover when I actually started studying things outside of just what my dance training was offering me. So if you think of a swimmer, right? A swimmer develops strengths in particular areas. So they practice certain movement patterns that they become much more proficient at over time. They develop strength. They develop fluidity with certain movements. They definitely increase their capacity for endurance. But when you take that swimmer out of the pool and put them in a scenario where they have to run or jump or do highly coordinated movement patterns out of the water, I bet we would see a lot of gaps in their movement capacity, in their movement ability. Take a cyclist, right? Somebody who cycles on a regular basis at a competitive level, of course, is going to develop endurance and power and strength. But you take that cyclist off the bike and you put them in an Olympic lifting class, or you put them in a martial arts class or a dance class, and I bet you're going to start to see gaps in their movement ability. So when I think of a good mover, I think of somebody who cross-trains in a very intentional way. So they play sports, many sports, not one sport. They lift weights. They do some endurance activities. They do some activities that definitely challenge their coordination abilities, like martial arts or dance or gymnastics. Somebody who's doing all of those things is going to be overall a better mover than someone who specializes in just one of those things. So my point is, the more you expand your movement vocabulary and ability, the better mover you will be. When you allow your training to be pollinated with a lot of different types of movement elements, you become a better mover. Being excellent in one dimension of movement does not make you a great mover. And similarly, approaching health with the attitude of a generalist can make you a healthier human. Our culture is so hyper-focused on the physical health component of the health equation, but physical health alone does not create a state of deep health. It doesn't create a state or a sense of deep well-being. Some of you, hopefully many of you, attended my Women's Health Reimagined masterclass a couple weeks ago. And in that masterclass, I talked about the different dimensions of health. I talked about physical health and mental health and emotional health and social health, environmental health, and even spiritual health, and how they are all connected and interlinked. And like dominoes, when one of these dimensions gets out of whack, it affects the other dimensions. Challenges in one area of health do not stay isolated to that one area of health. So if I am having a lot of trouble processing emotion in healthy ways, that is going to carry over into my social interactions. It's going to impact my mental health, and it's even going to impact my physical well-being. When my physical well-being is disrupted, my hormones are a little bit wonky or a lot wonky, I haven't gotten a good night's sleep, that affects my capacity to process emotions in healthy ways, to take agency over my mindset and really be proactive in the way that I'm thinking. It affects my relationships because I'm more reactive. So health in one area affects all areas. And I propose that a person who develops skills in all of these areas likely experiences a deeper sense of well-being and health than the person who pursues health purely as a physical pursuit. I know people, and I bet you do too, who spend hours in the gym, but virtually zero time on their own personal development, like thought management or learning how to be emotionally agile, or learning how to communicate better with their loved ones. I know people who spend hours on meal planning, but virtually zero time on fostering healthy relationships. And we know that social connection can massively influence our physical chemistry. So when we only focus exclusively on one area of health, or we put most of our attention on one area of health, we're leaving a lot to be desired on the table in terms of our sense of well-being. To me, it's very much like being a specialist. So you're specializing in the area of physical health to the detriment of your mental and emotional health. And isolating apart from the whole, I always think compromises the integrity of the whole. You are a whole person. You are a multifaceted person. And your approach to health and wellness needs to reflect that. And I think a lot, when I think of like generalists and specialists, I think a lot of modern, like medicine, modern day medicine specifically, that we are living at a time where more and more information and research is starting to show us just how connected the systems of the human body actually are. For example, what happens in your gut, your digestive health, your intestinal health, does not stay isolated to that part of your body. What happens in your gut travels into your brain. It affects your muscular health. It can affect your bone health. It can absolutely affect your mental and emotional health. And the reverse is also true. When you think about mindset and you think about the way that you manage your brain or don't, the thoughts you think hugely influence other systems of the body because the body responds to both real and imagined stress. So when we are constantly playing out the worst case scenarios in our head, or we're worrying about things that haven't even happened, and we're just imagining everything that could possibly go wrong all the time, we are literally inducing a cascade of hormonal consequences that affect every system in the human body. So just like you can't isolate your bicep, right? And just, well, you can isolate your bicep, and you could just train your bicep every single day you train. But is only training your bicep going to create a strong and resilient body? Of course not. And I don't believe that when we only exclusively focus on physical health, that we are creating a healthy human. Even in like the world of physical therapy, right? Musculoskeletal health. We're learning that pain in one area of your body does not mean the root cause of that pain is in that part of your body. So muscular dysfunction in your hip could be a byproduct of muscular dysfunction or imbalance in your ankle or your shoulder or your spine. So we can't just look at the isolated area as the cause of the problem. And when it comes to health and we think about all these physical maladies that people are experiencing, it isn't just a question of what are they eating and how much are they exercising. How do they think about themselves and their life and the things that happen in their life? What are the qualities? What's the quality of their relationships? Do they have a higher sense of purpose in their life? Can they process emotion in healthy ways? These are all things that can create dis-ease in the human body. But these are issues that are not going to be resolved by eating more salads or doing more time on the treadmill. Hippocrates is, I guess, apparently known for saying that it's more important to know the patient who has the disease than the disease that has the patient. And what I hear in that quote is that we need to understand the wholeness of a person's life in order to make them well. We can't just understand the disease or one area of health in order to make that person well. There's a bigger conversation. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because medicine is broken into a lot of specialties. And please don't hear me saying that there isn't value in that, right? Like specialists spend years studying particular organs and procedures to be able to help people with very specific issues. I have a lot of clients constantly asking me where to find referrals, where to find practitioners who can counsel them about prevention across the whole body. And of course, my head always goes to naturopathic medicine, which I believe is more holistic in the approach. I think of, a family physician. I think of even like pediatricians, right? Pediatricians are generalists. They work with children, but they work on helping to diagnose mental, social, physical challenges, not just in one physical area of the body, right? So there's lots of dimensions that they're addressing. I was reading in the National Institute for Health website, there was an article that was actually titled, what is it? I have it here. Well, yeah, what do patients want? Generalists versus specialists. And I thought this was really interesting. It said, the need for generalist physicians in the US is large and growing. Generalists offer a unique and relevant set of skills to address any problem presented to them, including those with psychological or social causes. Their expertise isn't defined by an organ, system, or procedure, but rather by their ability to assess and deliver whole patient treatment in collaboration with the patient and with specialists. Generalist primary care has been shown to deliver better prevention and reduce healthcare costs. And so I think that as we adopt a generalist perspective of health, so when we approach our own health journey from a generalist perspective, it gives us kind of that bird's eye view. It helps to open up the possibilities for why we might be experiencing certain diseases in our physical body. Causes outside, again, of that diet and fitness conversation. And yes, once we have that bird's eye view and we can really start to identify where some of the gaps might be, it can better inform what specialists we might need to hire in order to help us with that specific issue. But I want to hire a specialist who also understands that bigger picture, that there's more at play than just this organ or just this problem or just this particular dis-ease in the human body. I think of like my car mechanic. When my car is having trouble, and I'm actually having car problems right now, so I just took my car to the car mechanic. I didn't take my car to a specialist, somebody who only works on windshields or only works on interior upholstery or who only works on the brake system, right? I took my car to somebody who could see the whole picture and who can have a larger conversation about auto mechanics and then can help me diagnose where the problem might be coming from. I think of my husband, who is a very skilled craftsman. He worked for years as an interior trim specialist in the carpentry industry. So in Boston, he would go into high-end homes and do their trim. He would do their staircases, their cabinetry, those kinds of things. But because my husband has such a larger understanding of construction, he knows how to build a house from the bottom up, it actually made him better in his specialty because he understood the scope of the project. So here's a few little tips for starting to approach your health journey from the perspective of a generalist. Number one, acknowledging that there is more to health than just physical. You are a multidimensional being, and acknowledging those other dimensions that impact your physical well-being is really important to do. Allow yourself to get curious about yourself, about how you move through the world, about where the gaps are in your self-care and or with your health. And get curious about what the causes might be outside of simply nutrition and exercise. Again, I'm not dismissing those as important components of the health equation, but I feel like we're hyper-focusing on them to the point of dismissing so many other things that are contributing to physical maladies. Also, we have to be willing to experiment. We have to be willing to try some things on to see what works and what doesn't. The name of the game is adaptability, right? Learning how to be flexible. And as I was getting ready for this podcast, I came across an article in Forbes magazine by a woman named Megan Casserly. And the article was titled The Secret Power of the Generalist and How They'll Rule the Future. And I wanted to read you the first couple paragraphs because I thought it spoke really beautifully to this concept of adaptability and why it's so important to our health to be well versed in a lot of different skill sets so we can easily adapt when life throws us a curveball. Here's what the first two paragraphs of this article say. When discussing the animal kingdom, each creature resides on a species scale of generalists to specialists. Specialist creatures, like the koala bear, can only survive on an extremely limited set of conditions: a diet of eucalyptus, a warm climate, and they must live in trees. Generalists, on the other hand, think mice, are able to survive just about anywhere. They can withstand heat and cold, eat your breakfast cereal or seeds, and berries foraged in the wild. As a result, specialist species thrive only when conditions are perfect. They serve a very specific purpose within their particular ecosystem and are extremely adept at navigating it. However, should those conditions change as a result of nature, or more commonly an outside force, specialist species often become extinct. In contrast, mice can move from spot to spot on the globe, adapt to different cultures, diets, and weather systems, and most importantly, stay alive. That was the end of those two paragraphs. What I loved about that is the idea that when life throws us a curveball, when life changes, because life is always changing, the diversity of skill sets will be our savior. So maybe you go through a period of your life where you cannot exercise. Maybe you're sick. Maybe you have an injury. How do you stay healthy within that? Well, you have to control what you can, which is you can control what goes in your mouth. You can control how you think about what's happening to you. You can process the difficult emotions that will surely come from that kind of limitation. But if you don't have those skill sets and you only associate being healthy with exercising, does that mean it's not possible to be healthy within that? I would argue no, that it is possible, but it requires having a broad scope of skills to support you as life changes. Because life will ebb and flow. You will go in and out of challenges throughout your life. Life is filled with dis-ease. Do you have the skill sets to help you navigate those dis-eases? And those skill sets are not isolated to the conversations of just what you're eating and how much you're exercising. I know that goes without saying, but I was going to say it anyway. So I am now going to share an interview with you that I did recently with a member of my Rumble and Rise community. Her name is Callie Thorne. And her interview, I feel, really beautifully speaks to the work that she has done over the past year in expanding her own perspective on what health really is and how learning skills outside of the diet and exercise conversation has radically improved her health and really helped her to show up in more powerful ways in other areas of her life. So I'll read you a quick bio and then we'll do this interview. So Callie Thorne is a multi-business entrepreneur. She's married to her husband, CJ, and they have 3 young kids that, of course, keep them on their toes. Callie grew up and currently resides on her family's farm and ranch in western North Dakota, which influenced her multi-entrepreneurial imagination from a very young age. They run a cow-calf operation. They have custom backgrounding feedlot, and they sell beef directly to consumers. Callie is also a certified member of the John Maxwell team, which allows both her personal and professional arenas to continuously evolve as a speaker, a trainer, and a life coach. She works with a variety of clients, including youth, business owners and leaders, local government teams, organizations, and individuals. Agricultural leadership and entrepreneurial success are just two of her passions that she enjoys pursuing while connecting with others. So without further ado, let's get into this interview with Callie Thorne. All right, so Callie Thorne, welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast.
Hi, Courtney.
Hi. Is this the first time you've ever been on a podcast?
I think it actually is. Yes.
You do a lot of speaking and other things, so.
Yep. And it's usually in front of people is the funny thing. So
yeah, well, I'm so glad I could introduce you to the world of podcasting and be your first interview. I would love to start. Of course, I did a little intro just before this about you, but I would love for you to just tell the audience a little bit about yourself because you are a very multi-textured woman and you've got a lot going on.
We farm and ranch full time here in Western North Dakota. So we've got baby calves, we finish cattle, we sell beef, we do all sorts of things. But then I also do quite a bit of speaking, training, and coaching with the John Maxwell team. So a lot of different things going on, plus, of course, 3 little kids and a husband to add.
Yeah, just those minor responsibilities.
So it keeps things interesting and every day is different, which I guess is one of the things that I love about everything that I get to do.
Yeah, you just never know what to expect. So you've had to learn how to embrace uncertainty and go with the flow.
Very much so. And for a person who loves plans and schedules, I learned to pivot a lot, I guess.
It's so funny. You probably noticed like my hair, like I'm trying to embrace this curly hair thing because I have so much curly hair and I've like thought
I love, by the way.
Well, great. Thank you. It's a lot of work. And I was just telling somebody the other day, I said, you know, what's so frustrating about curly hair is I have to embrace uncertainty, right? Like I just never know what I'm going to get. And I have to kind of go with the flow. So it's like, I kind of get to do a lot of my own practice.
That is funny. I used to have a lot more natural curly hair where I could do that when I was younger. And as I age, isn't it interesting how hair changes and stuff?
So you've been a member of Rumble and Rise. How long? It's been a while.
Oh, you know, it's funny. I think I originally found you when the pandemic hit. So a little over a year ago, I started listening to the podcast. And shortly after that is when I joined Rumble and Rise, I believe. So maybe about a year.
Yeah, it's been about a year. And why did you join?
I think I love the podcast so much that I knew that if I would be able to connect with you and the other women in an even more in-depth way, I just thought, man, that could open a lot more doors for me, you know, and the things that I have going on in my life, in my mind. And I just wanted to give it a peek.
You've been in there a year now. You've done a lot of work, a lot of development. And so I'm curious, like now that you've been in there, how would you describe it to somebody who has no idea what it is?
I think one of the biggest things that people maybe don't realize it is when you surround yourself with other big thinkers or people who want to get better, like you become like them. So I think I'm pushed in a very good way to recognize more of my thoughts. You know, when I'm not happy with how a day went or how I reacted to someone or how something went, I am so much more aware of, okay, why did that happen? Like I can sit back and reflect. I take that time to reflect a lot more. And I just know that a lot of that is because I'm surrounding myself with you guys. I'm hearing those positive conversations. I've learned so many of the skills and I'm much more able to put them to use, I think, in my everyday life.
I love it. Yeah, I was just talking on a podcast recently about self-leadership and how there's this idea that self-leadership should be like a solo mission, right? And it's interesting because self-leadership is you taking responsibility for your life, but it's only possible if we're in the right environment, right? And we have the right kind of nourishment. Mm-hmm. And so I love that you're speaking to that, just this power of the community aspect.
Well, and I think a lot of times as women, we have this feeling that again, it's probably a thought that becomes a feeling, right? That I should be able to handle all of this. Like I should just get better. I should be able to read books and become a better person, maybe attend a few different classes and stuff. But when we've got kids and businesses and life and just the everyday things that happen to us, when you have a supportive group like you do, where we can even just comment in the Facebook group, or we can come to you with questions, or we can come to you and have coaching if we need it or want it, I think it just opens up more possibilities for us to improve our lives that much more.
And, you mentioned earlier too, this piece of awareness, which of course is such a big part of what we do. And when I talk about this on the podcast, or I talk about it, in a newsletter, a lot of people hear awareness and I think their response is, but I am aware. I already know what my problems are. I already know where I'm screwing up or falling short. So how would you describe the level of awareness you used to have, like prior to coming into Rumble and Rise, with the level of awareness you have now?
I think that's almost kind of the tricky thought, is we do think we are aware. Like all of the training that I have, my background, the things I've been able to study, like I thought I was pretty good at some of that. And not that I'm not, right?
Sure.
I'm able to pass that on to other people. But when it comes to yourself, man, when you can have a coach that can point things out, because I really think you can only be so aware of yourself, right? We all have those blind spots. And until somebody else can point it out to you, you don't even realize some of those things that you are unaware of.
It's so true. When you're in an incubator of support and you have a coach or you have some kind of mentorship, it is really like that bird's eye view rather than the tunnel view. Mm-hmm. Because you are in your life every day.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's all it takes, is we think we know, but all you need is somebody else to point out just one other little thought, or to give you almost a different perspective on something that we never would have come up with on our own. Because we have our own thoughts, we have our own habits, we have our own lives. And until somebody comes out with that other side or that other view, or maybe they have different experiences to make you like, what if you think about it this way? Have you ever looked at it this way? Yeah. And it just makes you think. And that's how you can become that much more aware, which leads to so many other things. You can make better decisions. You can be more informed and all of that.
Yeah. And also be equipped with better tools. Right? Mm-hmm. Because again, I think a lot of women who come into Rumble and Rise to improve their health, they've been exposed to how many tools in terms of diet and exercise? Mm-hmm. A lot. And it's not that we don't talk about those things inside of Rumble and Rise, but the expanse of what we talk about is so much greater. It goes so far beyond those two topics.
Mm-hmm. No, and I think that's the huge thing. Even when I had initially started working with you, I mean, my kind of first thought was, again, it was COVID and I was probably not eating the way I should and stuff, but I think it just opened my mind to so much more. You have taught me how much more health is not just exercise and eating, right? I've always loved exercise ever since I was in high school doing sports, through college, and even now the different things that I do. And again, until I was made more aware, I didn't really recognize. I knew it, but I didn't connect the dots that health is also my relationships. It can be related to finances, to my businesses and all of that, because how I'm feeling mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, all of those things are tied together. And I love how you can bring that bigger picture to everybody.
What do you think has been the most impactful thing that you've learned since being in the space?
I think just taking the time to recognize, again, it's one of those things where your thoughts and feelings are kind of connected, but until you hear somebody really teach on it and come to you with those questions and make you realize like, oh, I do feel that way because I think that way. So much of the model and what you teach is just intriguing and makes a person, I guess, become aware, think different thoughts. And then you get to choose, right? I think that's the big thing, is now I'm still left with, I have the option to take this path or this path. I'm aware of what my thoughts are. and I can do the work to try and change them if I want to, if it's a priority of mine, or I can just sit with it, right? And that's probably another big thing that I have learned from you is emotions are okay. I think we, especially as women, we chase this idea that we're supposed to be happy all day long. We're supposed to feel good ourselves, and we're supposed to be making other people feel good, make the world this happy, joyful place.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it's okay to feel frustrated. Like, I thought I wasn't supposed to feel that. I'm not supposed to feel sad. I'm supposed to hurry up and get over those emotions. And you've helped me, and I know so many other, realize that it's okay to feel your feelings, and sometimes it takes a while to move through them. Like, it's just a natural thing in our body.
Yeah.
And then we can make our choices after that. How do we want to move forward? How do we want to look at things?
Absolutely. And there's such a consequence to not feeling our feelings, which I think a lot of people neglect to remember, right? So when you're not feeling your emotions, you're eating them, or you're drinking them, or you're Netflixing them, you're doing something with them.
The word that you use that I've always loved, and I find myself saying it all the time to other people, is buffering.
Yeah.
And, what am I doing instead of like just sitting down and thinking about how I feel or why am I having these thoughts? And it might not be bad buffers, right? I mean, I might go for a nice long run, or I might clean my whole house, but it's because or I might eat chocolate chips too, right? But it's because I'm buffering. Like, I don't want to think about that thing, and I don't want to figure it out. And so I go buffer with something else. And I think that's been something huge that I've learned, and I recognize every day now. Like, wait, am I just not wanting to feel this or think about this? And am I just choosing to buffer with something else right now?
Yeah. And it prevents us, all that buffering prevents us from facing the truth of our life. So then we can't really take responsibility for our life because we're numbing out all the time. So it's interesting. I love that you're bringing all this up, because it's, it's one thing to just change the way you eat. It's something entirely different to understand why you were eating the thing in the first place, right? Especially if you weren't hungry, which is usually the case. I mean, we can get really hungry with low blood sugar and all of that, which causes some overeating challenges. But a lot of people are turning to food to not feel. And that is what we talk about so much inside the arena.
And that's where we recognize, like, oh, it only made me feel good for 5 minutes or a half hour. And then I'm back to not feeling good again.
Your problems are still there. Yeah, they're still waiting for you. And they're actually,
I thought they would disappear with those chocolate chips, but they never do. So
right. And now you've got more problems, right? Because now you feel like hell from eating whatever you ate, plus your original stressor you never really dealt with.
Exactly.
So it just starts to compound, and holy cow, can we stay in that space for a long time? So what do you think has been your biggest win since you joined?
My biggest win is maybe even how I just approach everyday life.
Yeah.
Being able to think things through. And I always kind of prided myself on that, being a planner and being able to hear, different sides of different stories and stuff. But I think just being able to recognize, I think it almost goes back to that model, thinking things through. Like, why am I feeling the way that I'm feeling right now? Or slowing down to kind of check myself, right? What do you call it when we sit with ourselves during the day?
Yeah, just check-ins.
Just doing different check-ins. It's like, why am I feeling like this today?
Yeah.
And so I think it maybe sounds small, but when you are the person living your life, right? And you know that we have struggles every single day. Something comes up, somebody says something, a plan changes, a kid gets sick, or whatever the case might be. I just think I am that much more mentally tough, even mentally, emotionally and stuff, because of everything that I've learned.
Yeah.
I can have the choice to react to this way, or I can choose to react this way because of what happened. And I know a lot of times it might be the harsher reaction, like quick to jump to something where it's like, wait, let's think this through. Like, what's a better choice? Because we all have those choices, I think, is the neat thing in life. And so if we know how to self-coach even, which we've learned so much from you too, wait, I can ask myself these good questions to have better answers, better results. I can do that in all of my situations every single day now.
Yeah. So on that note, I wanted to ask you, like, in what ways do you think, well, first of all, in what ways do you think your health has improved since being inside of Rumble and Rise, specifically your physical health, right? And then in what ways has that carried over into health and other spaces and places of your life?
Mm-hmm. I think my health in general, again, it's another thing I've learned for you probably is that consistency doesn't mean that we have to do it perfectly every single day,
Yeah.
right? But I can make better choices, and I think I'm just that much more aware of it. Like I said before, when you know you're surrounded with people, when you know you have these weekly coaching calls, when you stay plugged into the podcasts and the master classes that we get inside Rumble and Rise, like it's hard to make the harder choices. It's like, oh, but I just learned about this, right? And so I think I've just become so much more aware of my food choices, thinking about them and how they impact my body. A thing that you say a lot that I really like is this nourishing my body the way that I want it to, right? Or again, is this something that I'm buffering with, or just maybe I am out with friends and I did decide that it is okay to have dessert tonight, but being okay with it.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I'm going to choose to feel guilty later. I'm making a conscious decision to eat this and I'm going to be fine with it, instead of being so hard on ourselves. And so I think food can play a big role in that, which then trickles into, am I going to choose to make myself feel guilty the next morning because I had dessert, when I had pre-decided that it was going to be okay.
Right. Yeah.
So a lot of it, I think, just plays into that mental and emotional health too, because food is connected to everything.
Everything.
So many things, and that's become very clear. Again, it's kind of one of those things, but until it's discussed and
practiced.
Exactly. And you've given us so many of those tools inside Rumble and Rise that we can use every single day throughout our life.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think when you do self-coach and when you do practice the skills that we give you inside of Rumble and Rise, it's not that you always make the decision, like the best decision and dedication to your health. It's that you're taking responsibility for whatever decision you make. And there's a level of peace that comes with that, which then allows you to be less reactive in other spaces and places. Like, I bet you're nicer to your husband, right? And you're a less reactive mother when you feel good about yourself, when you feel good about the choices you're making for you.
Exactly. And that's the thing. We have these choices all day long, right? And so we have to decide, how am I going to feel about that choice? And even when we make a bad choice, or instead of putting that guilt and shame on ourselves, it's like I've learned to see it a different way, have another perspective, recognize, how is this going to trickle down in the evening to affect my husband, my kids, everything else, instead of being in that state of overwhelm, which you've taught us. I love that too. How can I bring myself to that state of whelm where it's not too much, but it's enough that I'm still getting things done, of course.
Yeah, you're still challenged, but you're not excessively so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. So what would you say to a woman who has been sitting on the fence about joining, who's been listening to this podcast for months, maybe years? I get emails from people who literally have listened to every episode since the inception of this show. That's 231 episodes. And they're still not a member of Rumble and Rise, which blows my mind. So what would you say to those people?
Man, it's one of those things that it's a different experience for everybody.
Yeah.
And so I can sit and tell you all day long how I benefit, but it's not going to be how the next woman benefits. And I am very big on how you view things. And I'm big on viewing things as opportunities instead of risks.
Yeah.
And so come try. I mean, what do you have to lose is the biggest thing, right? Is what do you have to lose if you come to try it for a month, 3 months, a year? Because I bet you will stick around.
Yeah.
There is something for everyone. And I just think there is so much knowledge, and it's life-changing. But again, you will never know unless you come and try it.
Tell me this, because I think this is where a lot of people get hung up. I offer a lot of value on the podcast, right? So I talk about a lot of concepts. There's 230 episodes. There's a lot of opportunity to consume content. But what would you say makes the content inside of Rumble and Rise different? Because it's very different.
I almost feel like, and this is for me, and I really enjoy this, but there's a sense of even accountability in a great way, right? You'll give us ideas, you'll give us challenges, but not in a scary way. I think some people, maybe they're afraid of being pushed too much, or quite honestly, people are probably afraid of what they might find if they dig deep and ask some of these
Oh,
questions,
always. Yes.
try and find some of these answers for themselves. But if it can be life changing in a way that you know you want to change, again, why wouldn't you take that shot and see it as an opportunity? Like, what if this could change the rest of my life? This could change the complete path and trajectory for what's to come, whether you're 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s.
Totally. And, on that note, because you have young children and I have a son, and a lot of women inside the community have children. And I think what would have changed for us growing up had we had these skills at their age. And so I look at women inside the community who are raising young people, and I just think, what a gift that you have these skills to teach them so they can hopefully have a little less suffering along their own journey.
And I think that goes back to, it is not just what people typically think of health and wellness. You're not on there telling us how to exercise and what foods it is that we need to eat. It's that overall, that bird's eye view of health. And again, that comes down, that impacts my children, my family, my businesses, my finances, my relationships. It affects everything.
Yeah. And we talk about everything. We do talk about nutrition and exercise, but it's more in terms of frameworks. So whatever your preference is for exercise, or whatever your preference is for dietary choices, it fits within a framework. So you can show up for yourself and eat those things or move that way, whatever the case may be. I want to ask you one more question, because especially for you, you're an outlier. And what I mean by that is the large majority of women in this community, I would say, are the ages between like 40 and 65. You know that. And so I want you to speak to the advantage of that. Like, what has been the advantage for you of being in this incubator with women who are a little further down the pipeline?
I honestly love it. I mean, I find myself in life even spending time with women who are a little bit older than me sometimes, because I know that they have so much more knowledge than I do. They have more experience. And I think being humble and being able to admit that says a lot about a person. But it is so fun, because I know a lot of times you end up talking about hormones or, things that happen further on in life.
Yes.
And I'm sitting there taking notes like, no, I would not know any of this had it not been for this group of women that I think of. I mean, that I think of now as my friends, and that I can go to for anything too. And just almost being able, it's kind of like when you have a baby, right? It's like, where were my friends? And they didn't tell me that this was going to happen and that this was going to happen when you're a new mom and stuff. And here it's kind of the same thing, just the different experiences that they're sharing, whether it's with kids, life, health, hormones, whatever it might be. I just think learning is such a valuable tool, and then being able to use it in your life can create so much change.
I love it so much. Okay. So I want to know that, like, it's been so awesome to witness you sort of developing and applying these skills and expanding your life in so many ways. And so what's next? Like, in terms of, like, what is the next discomfort you're committed to leaning into?
That is a great question. I think just really I think sticking to what I want, right?
Yeah.
And being able to, though, forgive myself when I don't. I think I can be hard on myself, right? If I'm wanting to eat a certain way, or if I'm wanting to slow down and check myself throughout the day, and just being able to give myself that grace. That's what I love, the name Grace and Grit, right? It's a little bit of both, but being able to extend that grace to everything that I do in life, and recognizing, because when I am hard on myself, what is that doing for me? How's that serving me and my life, the people that are involved in it, all the relationships I have and stuff, because that impacts them then. And so, just having that willingness to see things through, stick to it, but allowing the grace when it's needed.
Yeah, it's so interesting, because I think this is like the challenge that every woman faces, is recognizing that you are going to get knocked off your game often and much. It is a baked in part of the process. because it provides us with so much opportunity for self-development. And I always say health is a journey of self-discovery. So every time we get a little misaligned, it's an opportunity to learn something about ourselves.
And
if we
I say that,
Yeah.
and I say that all the time to people. I mean, if you're not learning every day in your life, like, are you even living? You know, how but I'm a learner. I love to learn and grow. And I think you can just become a better person every single day if you're willing to take in a little bit more information or become more aware of yourself and how you can grow.
Absolutely. And learning, if you're truly learning in the trenches, it's rarely comfortable, right? I mean, it sucks sometimes, like where it just feels, why is it so hard?
I saw a quote just the other day that said something like that. Like, it takes a strong person to be willing to be uncomfortable, but want to see those results, right? And that's what people, I think, a lot of times don't recognize is it takes work, right? You see people who just float to the top, or they seem so healthy, they seem like they've got great relationships and all those things, but it takes work. Those people are working hard mentally, physically, emotionally, and you bet their health plays a big role in that, and it takes work every single day.
And you know what's interesting about hard work? I've heard many, many people speak to this recently. Andrew Huberman being one of them, he has the Huberman podcast, amazing, brilliant man, neuroscientist. But he talks about how humans thrive in effort. Like, we actually tend to be happier and healthier when we're actually doing hard things. And the other thing it makes me think of is that recently I was watching the Long Way Round documentary. Have you ever heard of this? It's with Ewan McGregor, who we all love. Like, how can you not love Ewan McGregor? But him and his best friend back in 2004 decided to literally ride motorcycles basically around the world. And we're talking about like completely uninhabited parts of Mongolia, Eastern Russia, like really crazy territory. And when they're in Mongolia and Russia specifically, the roads are insane. Like, they are not built for even a car, let alone motorcycles. Like, they're just a disaster. And there are days where they only travel 10 miles because they fall so often and it's muddy and they're a mess. And it's so interesting because at the end of the documentary, they look back and they're like so proud of themselves. They would do it all again. And they learned so much about what it takes to overcome and that they can figure it out and they could push forward. And I just feel like that is so synonymous with the journey of self-discovery and the journey of health, you know, is that, man, it's hard sometimes, but if you have the right people around you and you have the right tools and a can-do attitude, you're going to get there.
Exactly. No, that's a great example of, I mean, even me today, I said yes to something that had I not been part of your group, I don't know if I would have said yes, because it looks scary and it looks hard and all of these things. But I know that I've got a positive mindset going in, like, this is going to be a great learning experience. I know with the right mindset going in and the tools that I have, I'll be able to manage my time. And on these hard days that are going to be coming, like, I know that I'm emotionally able to coach myself through it. I'm able to jump in the Rumble and Rise group and receive more training or tools or have coaching from you specifically. And I think that's one of the things that sometimes, like you said, people are afraid to do the hard. But like I said, it's a choice to view it as a risk or an opportunity. Yeah. Could it be something really great or could it be something not so great? And so much of that has to just do with our thoughts and how I want to view it.
It's so true. And to realize, just that realization that you have a choice in how you think about things and what you make things mean is like game changing. Game changing. It's everything. So this has been beautiful. And it's been such a privilege to walk alongside of you. I enjoy it so much. I love having you a part of the community. And before we go, is there anything else you want to say? Is there anything else you want to share?
I would just tell people to give it a try. This group has been incredible. And I can truly say it's been life-changing. I was so happy when I originally found the podcast. And this is almost like the next level. Why would you not, join the membership group just to get a peek? Don't you want to know, right? What's in it for you? Because there is something so different for everybody that you're going to take away and be able to grow and learn yourself. And it just up-levels your life, I think.
It does. It totally up-levels your game. It's so funny. I had someone last week tell me that she's like, it's so funny. I used to think that you were so generous on the podcast and you taught us so many things, but then I got into Rumble and Rise and I was like, whoa, this is a whole different level. And
There's
it really
that
is
much more.
because like you said earlier, Rumble and Rise is about the application, right? Like you get inspired and fired up on the podcast, but Rumble and Rise is really where we put rubber to the road.
Is the action, right?
Yeah.
It's the action where we make things happen.
So true. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
If this interview resonated for you today, and you are someone who is ready to learn skill sets that will help you to honor the dynamic nature of health and the multi-dimensionality of health, I would encourage you to check out the Rumble and Rise membership arena. You can do that by going to graceandgrit.com/ready to rumble. Once again, that's graceandgrit.com/ready to rumble. And again, that Women's Health Reimagined Masterclass that I mentioned at the beginning of this episode today is also at the top of that page if you want to check it out. I hope to see you on the inside. Thank you for listening to the Grace and Grit podcast. It is time to mend the fabric of the female health story, and it starts with you taking radical responsibility for your own self-care. You are worth the effort, and with a little grace and grit, anything is possible.